All right, guys, let's go ahead and dive in here. We've got a couple of questions that came in after my sermon and wanted to just kind of touch on them. So, we are looking at parenting and all of those things, all those issues. So, we talked last week about how we should be parenting, what that looks like, and had a really great question around this topic that I wanted to bring up to everybody, and we're going to look at it. So, here's the question. It says, how do you navigate Santa? Confusing to little ones to have some people talk about Santa and some Jesus. Also Easter Bunny while on the topic. Halloween is getting quite controversial too, but somewhat easier to just avoid. Our family focuses on Jesus, but the world and family members don't. And we're struggling with how to explain to toddlers and young kids how they tie together or what to say to all the questions. Please help. All right, this is a great question and kind of a fun question, to be honest, because Easter's fun, Christmas is fun, all these things, and there are, one of the things we deal with is all of the secularized stuff around these holidays, and that's okay. We live in a secular world. We have to address these things in a way that helps our kids live biblically. And I think really here what you have to do is you have to look at the goal. So for like with our family, and this is just us, and we're not perfect. So please don't think that we're perfect. For us, what we've done in this whole thing is we have come along and basically said, okay, when it comes to Christmas and Easter, we make those about Jesus. I believe that's why they're there. Christmas, Easter, they're about Jesus. And here's kind of how we've handled the Santa Claus thing. Number one, when we give our kids presents, we put them as from us because some fat guy in a red suit is not getting credit for the gifts that we give them. Sorry, we're just not doing it. But one of the things that we'll do, because Santa Claus is so popular and all that, and we'll watch the Santa Claus movies. My kids love the Santa Claus movies with Tim Allen. We'll watch those, no big deal. But what we tell them is that Santa Claus is actually a historic man by the name of St. Nicholas. Yes, he gave gifts to children. He was a pastor and a church leader. My favorite story about Santa Claus is that in one of the councils, he supposedly got up and punched a heretic in the face. I love that story, and I tell that story to my kids. And what we try to do is we try to frame it in the historical reference of the fact that, Santa Claus is based on a man by the name of St. Nicholas, who was a real man. He was a Christian. He loved kids, and he gave gifts to kids. That's what he did. So we look at the historical one, and then we just kind of say, it's really about Jesus. It's about Jesus coming. He was the ultimate gift. And so some of the things we've done to help with that is we will, what do? We get books, and there's some incredible books. I really encourage you to check them out, especially if you have little kids. The one we started with was Jotham's Journey, and they are an Advent book. So we started celebrating Advent and just that preparation time up to Christmas. And with Advent, what it does is it prepares our hearts, and these stories bring about this really cool daily reading that help kids engage in the story of Christmas. And so that's what we're doing. We're doing that. And you gotta, in some ways, you don't want to recluse yourself off from the culture because the kids are going to be exposed. So what you want to do is you want to help them see it in a way that's biblical. So for us, a way that's biblical is Santa Claus was a real man. He died a long time ago. No, he doesn't come down a chimney. No, he doesn't have reindeer. But he was a real man who gave real gifts. So that's how we handle that. And we just have those conversations as a family. I don't correct people who send gifts from Santa or any of that. We don't. We have those one-on-one conversations with our kids and help them understand that. With Easter is 100% about Jesus. That's it. We don't do the Easter Bunny. I mean, we'll hide eggs just because it's a fun little tradition. But one thing that my wife does really well is she will find different ways to incorporate the gospel into the different Easter activities that we do. And Easter is a big one. We celebrate that. We do, and we are unashamed about this. Is about Jesus dying for our sins, coming back, and again, we just help our kids to understand what that is. Now, Halloween's a little different. And some people will say, "Oh, it's a Christian holiday. Oh, it's really All Saints Eve." Well, that might be, but it's gotten really dark. It really has. Do we allow our kids to dress up? Yes, our kids dress up. When they were little, they dressed up all the time. Is it a great time to go get candy? Sure, it's a great time to go get candy. Do we dive in on the dark stuff? No, we're not doing the dark stuff. We don't mess around with the demonic. We don't do any of those things. That's just not what we're gonna do. So, as you're just explaining, you just want to help give the kids really a historic view on all these. Now, I want to add a part. This wasn't in the question, but sometimes this will get brought up also. Isn't Christmas a pagan holiday? And you'll hear people say this. Well, we shouldn't celebrate Christmas because Christmas is a pagan holiday, and it's the winter solstice, and back in the early church, they just wanted to change people, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Okay. Same thing with the Christmas tree, as a fertility symbol, all of these things. All right. Here's kind of how I take that. All right. Is very, very simply this. Jesus redeems all things. He redeems us. We were pagans. Why can't he redeem what other groups considered, or what other groups had as a pagan festival? Was the winter solstice a pagan festival? Sure it was. Did some of them view the evergreen tree as all of that? Sure they did. But my God redeems things and makes all things new. And so how I view that is, we're going to celebrate it, but we're going to turn all of it to Jesus. So we set up a tree. Why do we set up a tree? Because it's an evergreen tree. It never dies, just like God's love never fails. We put lights on the tree. Why? Because at Christmas time, Jesus came. He was the light into the world. He was, it's the darkest part of the season. And what do? We put lights on trees. It's a light in the darkness. And so I wouldn't be as concerned, especially if you have kids, about them. Your kids aren't going to come away going, "Oh, this is a pagan holiday that we celebrate," unless you tell them that. All right. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to learn what you teach them about these things. And we can redeem our culture. We can redeem our holidays. We can redeem all of these things. But you have to give it some thought, and you have to really walk through some of that with them. And I want to share with you real quick, just Romans 14, I think, gives us a little bit of context on all of this, because it's really easy for people to be like, "Well, I'm right, you're wrong, and if you would think more like me, you'd be better," all of that. If you go to Romans 14, this is what it says. It says, "As for the one who's weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions. One person believes he may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. Let not the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let not the one who abstains pass judgment on the one who eats, for God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand." And it keeps going, and what Paul is essentially doing here is he's saying, look, guys, you don't need to argue over the small things, okay? Like, if it bothers your conscience to celebrate Christmas or Easter or whatever on those days, and you feel like they're wrong, or it is a pagan holiday or whatever, then you don't celebrate it. Don't worry about it. Like, if that's what your conscience leads you to, then okay. And it's not my job to criticize you over that, but it's also not your job to criticize those who do celebrate it. And it's one of those things where God gives us different convictions, and that's okay. For me, I believe that God redeems all things. I believe that God redeems the holidays, and I believe that ultimately they can be used to further our kids' knowledge and understanding and love of Christ. So that's my answer for today. Hope that helps you guys, and we'll see you next time.